this is Michelle Theberge, and my channel is Tips and Motivation for Artists and Painting Tutorials. I got a great question from Paul in Rochester, and he wrote that he has an issue of odor coming from the paints. He's been using a large gray tone board that he covers with saran wrap, and he has the saran wrap, it sounds like, clipped at the edge so he can pull it off, pull the saran over, and then he has resealable cups that he also clips to the board. So that's, I love getting people's kind of creative palette strategies, and applause to Paul for doing reusable, having a reusable palette. I'm big into that, and I'll link my video on my favorite painting palette. But as far as the odor, can the paint grow old and begin to smell? He used to just squeeze out what he needed and then spray, how you mist your paint with a mister, keep it wet while you're working. And short answer, yes, paint can mold and spoil easily. So I'm going to tell you some tips for this and how to prevent it. Now, the reusable cups, you can, if you want to do that, I would only dip into cups, and we'll just pretend this is a reusable cup. But the same thing for your painting mediums is you want to dip in with a clean palette knife and put what you need on your working surface. So I could smear this here, then wipe the knife. What's happening when you have the smell is that bacteria is being introduced into the paint or the medium. And that usually comes through the brushes, because these are big harbingers of bacteria. So when you dip it in the water and you leave it, and you're working over a period of hours, mold, spores, and stuff can develop in the brushes. So it's best never to dip a brush directly into your paint cup, whether it's a medium like this, a jar of paint, or a cup that you're using to reuse your paints with. You may have, you'll find out different brands of paint actually last longer than others in terms of molding or mildewing, getting that off odor. All acrylic paints have some kind of preservative in small or larger amounts, so you might experiment with different brands. You're using Golden Acrylics, which is a great brand. He's not using the open type, but I have in the past had Golden, because I used to use the kind in the jars because it's more affordable and you get more paint. But I had things spoil in there too. But that was because I didn't know about not dipping my brush in and being really clean. So it's easy to keep a palette knife more sterile. You can dip it in water, you can wipe it, and there's no bacteria that can form on that as you could get on a brush where it's just damp and sitting around, or in the studio. Think of sourdough bread. I live in the San Francisco Bay Area, and sourdough, what's special about that the sourdough here in San Francisco is the spores in the air. So there's just spores everywhere. We can't see them, but if you're allergic, you probably know what I'm talking about. You can probably feel them all the time. Anyway, so just be aware that there are mold and bacteria in the environment, and you want to prevent that from getting into your paint. So another workaround I've heard that may not help too much, but I did have a student 20 years ago who had a paint tackle box, and she kept her paint in it. She just refill it and just work from there. And so I don't think she was mixing or putting brushes in there. I can't be certain. She kept it in the refrigerator. So I think she put saran, misted the whole thing, put saran over it, and kept it in the refrigerator. And I don't know how long it lasted, but that worked for her. So depending on the type of paint that you're using, how clean you are with what tools and instruments you introduce into that paint, you may be able to get your paint to last longer if that's your desire. I'm just more of an advocate of keeping paint maybe for 2 to 3 weeks at a time. So that gives you time to work on a motif where you say you're mixing some colors and you want them to last over a period of weeks. And by then, hopefully you're moving on to another area of the paint. You don't need to keep the same mixed colors. I think saving paint is more for when you mix a color. It takes a long time to get just the precise color. You have to match it precisely the next painting session, and I think that's really helpful. So you can use a palette like this. I'll link the video and I show how to do that. My favorite palette is the Butcher Tray palette and how I seal it and stuff. So check that video out too. And thank you for everyone who sends these questions in, Paul. I really appreciate your question. I love answering them. And thanks to those who subscribe to the channel. That really does give me motivation to keep going when I find out new people have subscribed. It just makes me feel like I'm doing something helpful for you guys. So I wish you all the best with your painting, and I'll check in with you later on the next video.